Good afternoon, Trinidad and Tobago. I'm Mahalia Joseph and C News is live at noon. Topping the news at this time, government should take a step back and allow more discussions to take place on the property tax. This from the President of the Federation of Independent Trade Unions and NGOs, Joseph Remy. While he said he understands the anxiety of the Prime Minister to generate revenue, the working class are the ones who will suffer.
At this time, would the revenue derived be so much that it will allow the government to bring some level of economic stability? If that is not the case, then why the urgency? And that is why I think that maybe in Parliament, I would hope that the parliamentarians will raise this issue as a matter of public urgency and engage in another round of debate to determine how now do you make sure it does not have such a debilitating impact on the ordinary citizens.
He said many people are losing their jobs and wants to know where they will get the money to pay the property tax and maintain a decent level of livelihood.
Are those properties now going to be placed on the auction table? Are they going to lose their property because of their inability to pay the tax because they can't find sustainable employment? No, there are a lot of things that I think has to be given consideration before we go headlong into this thing without looking at the consequences. And that is my major consideration. Those who can't afford it, those who don't have stable incomes coming in, those who don't have permanent jobs, those who have lost their jobs, how are they going to maintain their property and what are the consequences if they don't pay the taxes?
The American Chamber of Commerce says it is concerned about the lack of clarity on the implementation of the proposed property tax. In a statement, it said it understands the urgency of increased revenue collection and supports the need for a property tax. However, the reintroduction of any policy measure must not occur in an environment of uncertainty. It is urging government to provide details on the valuation and implementation of the property tax, particularly where it relates to uncovered plant, rigs and machinery. Opposition Member of Parliament Dr. Rudal Munilal is calling for government to repeal and reform the property tax law, which government is in the process of implementing. This, as he said, the Dr. Keith Rowley-led administration is inflicting further hardship on the people of Trinidad and Tobago through measures that are increasing unemployment, sending up food prices and imposing new taxes. He said after stopping the baby grant and shutting down several state enterprises, people will now be forced to pay higher property taxes, putting them in a position.
Will pass this property tax burden on to the persons who pay them rent. This indeed is tantamount to a criminal act of negligence. The property tax is a burden to the poor, to the underprivileged, to the unemployed, and to the domestic workers and single mothers in particular. It must be repealed and reformed immediately.
The National Parent-Teacher Association says it is totally against the shortening of students' lunch hour to 30 minutes. The suggestion was made public on Wednesday by the National Primary Schools Principals Association and the Ministry of Education. NPTA head Zina Ramatali told C News this is not an acceptable solution for school indiscipline.
We are not in agreement with reducing the children's lunch hour. Certainly we are not going to agree now, or we are not going to agree in the future to reducing that important lunch hour to those children. It is a time where the children, they are under tremendous stress. And I think it's important that they have that social interaction and that they take that hour to interact with their peers, to build friendships and so on. And taking away that time certainly will put added pressure.
Shortening this break, Ms. Ramatali said, has implications for parents in terms of their collecting children from schools in the afternoon and many other aspects of school life. She is adamant that this is not the solution. Ms. Ramatali believes this solution is short-range and needs to be discussed on a wider platform.
Solution to the problem. We have to, this is a quick fix. What we need to look at is how we can reduce indiscipline and violence, re-engaging all the stakeholders. Having parenting programs, schools being more welcoming to parents. There are many schools where principals do not want PTAs in the school. Many principals across the country tell the parents plainly that they do not want the PTAs even to be affiliated to the national body.
On Thursday, the Minister of Education said before any move is taken, consultation will be held with all stakeholders. This is the C News Live Report at noon. Remember, you can keep up to date with all the latest news on our website at ctvtt.com, or you can check out on Facebook and Twitter pages at C News Live. Senior officers of the police service are at this time engaged in a walkabout in the enterprise community. Peter Christopher is there and we join him for this report. Good afternoon, Peter. Can you tell us some of the concerns raised by residents in the area and how the police have responded so far?
Good afternoon, Mahalia. Well, what I can tell you is that the walkabout just about ended about 10-15 minutes ago. The residents, for the most part, were happy that the police have established a presence in Enterprise over the past few weeks, but they are concerned that when the police leave, the violence will resurface, and they made a plea to the police officers there, in particular Inspector Richard Smith, that the police stay in the area because they are, to put it mildly, fed up of the violence. One lady said that she is afraid of the aftershocks, and she's hoping that the peace that the gangs preached yesterday comes not just in terms of peace of mind, as well as peace in terms of non-violence in the area.
Okay, thank you so much, Peter, for that update. And police have given the assurance that they will stay in the enterprise area. This concern was addressed during the walkabout a short while ago, as Peter just mentioned.
So, you understand? Well, it's like how long they're here a good while now, I wouldn't lie. Since after the boy died in the back here, I ain't hear it since that. Right? But we hear something night before, we don't know really what it is. I cannot point finger to say when we hear anything. But I am very scared because you cannot trust. Right? So we would like you to leave the police and the soldiers.
We are leaving the police and soldiers.
All right, thank you very much.
The rise of gangs since 2005 was the genesis of the mayhem in Enterprise. This is the conclusion of Islamic representative David Mohammed. As he charts the course of the increase in gangs, he says this is one occurrence that should not be ignored but managed immediately. Marie-Therese Bernard tells us more.
Mr. Mohammed says ignoring the phenomenon of the growth of gangs is to the detriment of the community. He says what is being seen now is the result of gangs being allowed to grow.
This crisis started around 2002-2003, where the Ministry of National Security in 2003 identified that there were 25 most wanted gang members in Trinidad in 2003. When we got to our record high murder rate, the Ministry of National Security released a statement saying there are 25 gangsters.
Mr. Mohammed says 2 years later, in 2005, the figures grew amazingly higher. He says there were 66 gangs, each with 500 members.
So within just a 2-year period, you saw massive recruitment. This is according to the statistics of the Ministry of National Security, from 25 gangsters to 500 gangsters in 66 gangs. And then last month, the Minister of National Security, this is 12 years later, announced that there are as much as 179 gangs comprising of between 1,500 and 1,600 gang members.
This growth in gangs, he says, is something that should have been dealt with earlier.
Society will blame those who are involved in it without recognizing that there's been an evolving, emerging culture which is being fueled by some of the larger institutional failures of this state. So I think all of us have the responsibility to look at the bigger picture, but all of us also have the responsibility to do our own part.
Mr. Mohammed said Thursday's initiative in Enterprise sought to correct the perception being espoused that Islam was violent. Pamphlets were distributed highlighting the peaceful intent of the religion, which Mr. Mohammed hoped would be shared in the community. Marie-Therese Bernard, C News.
Valuation surveyor Sunil Lalu says if a person does not have some of the documents required when filling out the valuation return form for their property tax, they can submit only what they have.
many people do not have much of this information. It is not necessary that to have all. So what the government is asking for, what the state is asking for, is that any information you have like these, to please submit a copy. So there's no need for property owners to go get a land survey if they don't have one, to go take out photos if they cannot.
People were asked by the Ministry of Finance to complete and submit the valuation return form by May 22nd. Failure to do so can result in penalties. Looking ahead, Dr. Lalu said money collected from property tax should be given to the local government bodies to increase the services provided to the communities.
We should be consistent with progressive countries if we are trying to put in place a progressive tax system, that the money goes to the local government institutions. As a matter of fact, in many countries, they collect it themselves directly. So this money could be used to give the local government some degree of fiscal autonomy, so that they no longer rely on central government resources to meet their mandates.
He said people may be more receptive to property tax if it is packaged in a better way.
Property tax has the potential to be a very, very positive driver of community development and community improvement. And if we package it like that and educate the public that this money is coming back to you, is coming back to your community to benefit your property, which will further add to the value of your property, then people will support it.
Workers at the Trinidad Cement Limited held a protest this morning to highlight several issues. At around 6:30 this morning, the workers had the demonstration outside the company's entrance in Claxton Bay to highlight several issues, including that of back pay, which has not yet been given to them, and an issue with shares to the workers.
Now they are saying the shares are no longer available to workers. While this might have been a quid pro quo type arrangement, it was being treated till now as a pro bono arrangement. We are really here to voice our displeasure with that. Our rate change as well with regard to salaries. We are still working for 2011 rates, and all of these things are moving really at a snail's pace.
However, according to Mr. Mohammed, the workers will not stop carrying out their duties. He said if they do, that the company will crash.
While workers would have made these immense sacrifices, for the sustainability of the company, and now also in the face of competition, because Trinidad Cement Limited has rock hard cement competing with us as well, which is why workers are not yet embarking on that type of action to cripple the company's operation, because we are well aware what the scenario is. Our sacrifices have been taken for granted.
Efforts are being made to use wastewater in a meaningful way in Tobago. This after a study conducted in southwest of the island showed there has been an accumulation of pollution due to improperly treated sewage.
Part of the study that we did was to come up with a wastewater management plan to address sewage starting from Plymouth in the Bukur area, but mainly in the Bonaccord Canaan area, because that's the area that drains directly into the lagoon.
He said over the years there has been a decline in the integrity of the marine life in the lagoon and reefs, and something has to be done.
The most important takeaway thing, I believe, is that what we need to do is to start seeing wastewater as a resource, and if we use it properly and treat it properly and remove it from being discharged into the marine environment, it can indeed be a resource for agriculture, for energy. It needs to be properly handled and treated and converted into a useful resource.
In just about 3 weeks, the Brian Lara Academy will be opened. The announcement was made yesterday by Minister of Sport, Darrell Smith.
On Saturday, the 13th of May, they'll have an opening ceremony where Mr. Lara has gotten his very good friend, another international icon, Sachin Tendulkar from India, to be here to play a Brian versus Sachin 11, a T20 game at the Brian Lara Stadium. He's going to be incorporating, you hear some more soon with regards to who else will be on both teams. We have a number of other star icons, athletes from the West Indies and from across the globe that will be participating in that game.
The Trinidad and Tobago Secondary Schools Track and Field Championships will take place on the 27th and 28th of June at the Hasely Crawford Stadium. And in a move to boost participation, President of the Trinidad and Tobago Secondary Schools Track and Field Association, Philip Allard, announced a change in the format of the games.
This sporting event will be a full inter-school sporting event. And when I spoke with my fellow principals, there is this understanding that they will better support their school, that students will better support their schools, that teachers will better support their schools. They will put that much more effort in the whole process. So we are a school championships with school uniforms, with all schools having their own transport, that kind of thing.
Trinidad and Tobago's national under-15 boys team will continue their match schedule with another fixture this Saturday, April 22nd, 2017 against the Southern Football Association under-15 invitational team at the Attobolden Stadium from 7 p.m. The TNT team under head coach Russell Latipi opened their 2017 campaign with a 3-1 victory over a Republic Bank Invitational 11 last weekend in Couva. The team is preparing for participation at the CONCACAF Under-15 Boys Championship in Florida in August of this year, as well as the Cayman Airways Under-15 Invitational Youth Football Cup in the Cayman Islands from May 2nd to 7th, 2017. That's it for sport. And that's how we end the CE News live report at noon. I'm Mahalia Joseph. Remember, for up-to-date and breaking news throughout the day, you can visit the CE News website at ctvtt.com. Have a good afternoon.